Welcome Battletech enthusiasts. I'm going to go over the rules of the computerized simulations that I do on this channel. This is because some people were kind of wondering about the Demolisher versus the LRM carrier, and they thought, oh, the Demolisher can't possibly lose to the LRM carrier. So now I'm going to show you how it works. So what I've done is I've built a computerized simulation that works in Excel, or actually numbers here on a Mac. And I simulate a battle between any two vehicles or mechs, or even a combination of 1 versus 2, with the idea that as soon as the first mech is destroyed in a group of 2, then that team loses. And the idea is the first mech or vehicle is like the tank or the armor, and the second is a DPS support. So here I've done these simulations. I only carried out 21 turns, and if 20 turns, and if it says 21, it means it never happens. Either the mech runs out of ammo, or the vehicle runs out of ammo, or some other thing happens and it's unable to destroy the other one, or it's immobilized and can't reach it. So first, crit pilot checks and motives are only potential, they're not verified. Weapons are always fire unless they're out of range or not enough heat. LRM and SRM clusters roll as per DFA rules. All other weapons have all points assigned the same location. Actual damage is not for weapons or degradation. Any mech or vehicle assumed to be attacked by undamaged mech. Only forward arc is assumed. The tolerate range, if you're shorter than that, you walk backwards. Favorite range, if you're longer than that, you run forwards. Okay, motives are divided by 2 and rounded up, and that's how many walk speed reduction there is. Walk or cruise is 0, then immobilized. There's a couple of things, and then there's heat management. How heat management is done is I have these values that I've created as a strategy, and then in the mech or vehicle I've chosen the heat strategy, and I've set them all to 1 for now. And I've tried various strategies, and 1 works well for most, although LRM carriers and demolishers actually don't take any heat because of the way vehicle heat is done. So this doesn't apply to them, but it applies to other, like any mech or any vehicle that has energy weapons. The heat will still be used, although energy weapon vehicles have heat sinks. This is basically some logic that I use for the strategy, and which I can describe in detail if necessary at some point. Then how I use it is down when the mech or vehicle is choosing when to shoot. It's one of the logic flags, like are you in range, are you heat enabled? Like this is the heat veto, this is the logic choice as to whether or not the weapon will be fired. Enabled means it's actually a weapon that has ammo left and things like that. Then range, are you in range? By the way, minimum range is not accounted for, so if it's within minimum range, no point blank shots are allowed, so it's basically disabled. PPCs are disabled below a distance of 3. And LRMs are disabled below a distance of 6. So now here it is. I've got 3 thresholds. I've grouped the weapons into thirds, so every third weapon is in the same group. So this first one here, it just looks, what's my current heat at the start of the round? How many heat sinks do I have? What is the heat threshold? If my firing this weapon causes me to exceed the heat threshold minus 25% of my heat sinks, then I will not fire this weapon. That's the logic. And of course, vehicles don't generate heat from ammunition-based weapons, so these are all allowed. Any weapon firing is allowed, even though these only the first 3 are real weapons because it's an LRM carrier. The others are all just non-existent weapons that do 0 damage. So those are enabled too, but that's just because of the logic flag. That's not the logic flag that handles whether it's finally fired, just the heat veto. Because that's how heat management is done. And how aggressive you are is basically that strategy flag. 1 is the least aggressive. So if the head, center torso, or legs of a mech or sides of a vehicle, then the mech is destroyed. If there's any internal, then it's damaged. Also, if any motives happen, it's damaged also. So that's the difference between destroyed and damaged. Okay, crits, pilot checks, and motives are, if they exceed a fixed value, the mech or vehicle is destroyed. Right now, pilot checks are not used, but crits and motives are. Basically, a vehicle that takes crits is destroyed, or a mech that exceeds a certain number of crits is destroyed, and a vehicle that takes us beyond a certain number of motives is also destroyed. and depends on what kind of, whether it's wheeled or hover. Hover, it only takes like 2 hits, 2 motives, whereas a treaded takes 6, and wheeled takes 4. And VTOL also only takes 2, but I don't have any VTOLs that I'm currently using. If the damage or armor damage exceeds a certain threshold, then the vehicle is also considered destroyed or damaged. And that's to simulate forced withdrawals. Although that is so heavy that it never happens most of the time. The center torso or the head are destroyed. Okay, no point blank shots. Okay. Also, only 11 weapons are accounted for. So if a mech or vehicle has more than 11 weapons, that 12th weapon is ignored. And the 12th slot to save Excel logic space is reserved for melee for mechs. They can kick. I don't have punch in, I only have kick. So every melee attack is assumed to be a kick. And then here are the hit rolls that I'm using. It's basically the standard Battletech rules for hitting for vehicles or mechs, depending on whether you're in a vehicle or a mech, and which is encoded in the data, those pink entry boxes for the vehicles. And that's it. That is how I make the rules for the simulations on this channel. And if you have any opinions, now the DFA rules, when I'm talking about LRMs and SRMs for clusters, there's a YouTube channel called Death from Above Wargaming. They have this really cool way of managing clusters that speeds up the game a lot. So I've implemented that into this Excel model. I'm calling it Excel even though it's numbers, because I originally made it in Excel and I transferred it to numbers. I just use that instead of the standard Battletech technique because it's logic-wise in Excel it's a lot easier. So it's not quite fully correct, but it's pretty much has a similar net damage as the original Battletech rules. It's fairly similar to it. It changes the distribution slightly, but it should not be enough to alter the game. You can debate that if you like, but it really isn't going to change the result of any of these battles. At least that's my claim. You could disagree with that, but we'll see. Okay, thank you. Anyway, that covers the rules for any future simulations that I share the results of. Thank you.